Hello, my friends. Hello, and welcome once again to Stately Von Manor, where Roger and I have returned for my weekend reading report. It's that thrilling time of the week where I talk about all the stuff that I read during the previous week. And it's just, today's just going to be as exciting as usual. So, as always, this past week has been very busy. I had very limited reading time. So, didn't read as much as I would have liked. Just like every single week of my life. Every single week of my life. And it'll be that way until I retire. But I'm probably not going to retire. I'm probably going to just keep working until I'm 90. Probably. I mean, they'll literally have to I will be working until I literally can't, like when I can't I'll be working until I can't remember how to get to work. Basically. When I start putting my underwear on the outside of my pants, that's when I'll stop working. So it's just going to be like this forever, basically. But what did I read last week? I did read a couple things. And the one thing I finished was this. This is H.G. Wells' The Sleeper Awakes, which I read for Roger's Cheap Old Book Club. That was this month's pick for Roger's Cheap Old Book Club, The Sleeper Awakes, which was an H.G. Wells novel that I've never read before. I'd never read this book. And this is the updated version. There was an earlier version of this, and H.G. Wells wasn't happy with it, so he revised it. So I read the revised version. And from what I've read of the changes that he made, it sounds like he made some good choices. The book itself is okay. It's certainly not one of H.G. Wells' best books, but there are a lot of things in this book that are really interesting. So basically, this guy, the sleeper, he's the sleeper, and this plot is slightly far-fetched. It's a wee bit far-fetched, this plot. So, the main character of this book goes into a trance. He hasn't been able to sleep, and finally he gets to sleep. But when he gets to sleep, when his insomnia is finished, he goes into a trance, and somehow this trance puts him into suspended animation. He's in suspended animation, and he sleeps for 200 years. He sleeps for sometimes this kind of thing happens. And he sleeps for 200 years. He wakes up. England is completely different. It's completely different. All this kind of futuristic stuff's going on. Society has completely rearranged itself in a very H.G. Wells way. And the sleeper, it turns out, because of some investments that have been made by a relative of the sleeper, he wakes up and he's like, he owns the whole planet, basically. But of course, there are these other people that want to use him, and he ends up actually being in a lot of danger. It's an interesting story. Like I said, the plot is a little far-fetched, but there's a lot of points of interest in that you get a lot of speculation. H.G. Wells always speculates about the future in his stories. There's a lot of that in this. This isn't nearly as good as The Time Machine. I thought The Time Machine did everything better. But it's still really interesting. And it has points of excellence. I thought the ending was quite good, actually. There are other things about it, though, that are not so great. Even though it's really thin, this is not a long book. What is it? It's not even 300 pages long. It still, at times, feels too long. Like, this story, for what this story is, it feels like this could be 50 pages shorter, But that's okay. It's not a long book, so it doesn't really matter. It does have a couple sections that drag a little bit, but that's fine. That's fine. It was still interesting. There was some very unfortunate period racism in this book, which shouldn't have surprised me, but it kind of did surprise me because you don't see a lot of that in H.G. Wells books other than this that I've read. It's in there, you know. But in this book, it's really in there. It's really in there. And when I talk, I'll make a whole video about this book because there's a lot to talk about. And I will go into specifics on that because the racism that's in here is kind of interesting. It's interesting what he was doing, and it's just an interesting artifact from the time that H.G. Wells was writing this book. And so The Sleeper Awakes, it was, you know, if you're really into H.G. Wells, you pretty much have to read it. Otherwise, he has a lot of other books that are better. Let me put it that way. But this was not bad. It was just, you know, it was okay. It was an okay H.G. Wells book. It was okay. And that's probably why most of us have never heard of it. And it's not one of those H.G. Wells books that, you know, is in print normally. So yeah, Sleeper Awakes. It's available for free on Project Gutenberg, just like every book that Roger picks for his book club. So I read that. That's the one thing I finished. And that makes this, in my 500 book challenge, the challenge where I'm reading 500 books that I already own before I'll buy any new ones. This is 82. I think it's 82. It's 82. And now I'm reading this book. This is Howard Andrew Jones, The City of Marble and Blood. This is the sequel to this. This is the first volume of the Chronicles of Henuvar. This is a sword and sorcery series by Howard Andrew Jones. And it takes place in a fantasy world that resembles ancient Rome. And Henuvar is a version of Hannibal. He's like a fantasy version of Hannibal. And he's a really interesting character, actually. So I read and I reviewed this. So there's a review of this up on my channel. You just have to... I will try to remember to link it down below if you're interested at all. But this is the one I'm reading now. It's just as good as the first one so far. I'm only on the second chapter, so I haven't gotten very far. But it's excellent. Howard Andrew Jones is really, really good at writing action-packed, interesting sword and sorcery stories. I've heard him compared to Robert E. Howard a lot. I don't know about that because I've read everything Howard has written over and over again. He's my favorite writer of all time. So when I read Howard Andrew Jones, I mostly see the differences rather than the similarities. But he is similar in that, well, first of all, he's really good with action scenes. I'm not sure he's as good as Howard, but you know who is. He's really good at that. He has a very strong sense of pacing. This is the second novel of Henuvar, and much like the first one, it's basically a series of linked short stories. And each one is just very plot-driven and, like I said, full of action and interesting characters. And he has an ability that Robert E. Howard had. So there is a similarity here in that he's able to put across fully realized characters in a fairly limited space. Like he's got a short story and he has characters in this bit of the book that are not going to be in the other bit. But he still makes them fully rounded, interesting characters in a story that's not very long. Which takes a certain kind of talent to do that. Robert E. Howard had that, and so does Howard Andrew Jones. On the other hand, his style is much more modern, and it does read differently than Robert E. Howard's books, I think. But it's really, really good. Certainly, it's the best sword and sorcery stuff I've read in a long time. Excellent stuff. The City of Marble and Blood. I will finish this. I'll do a review on it. It's pretty cool. And actually, Howard Andrew Jones sent this to me, so thank you for sending me this book. It's awesome. So that was cool. That's what I'm reading right now. I also have been reading Thor, of course. I'm a little bit behind on Thor, so I'm going to try to catch up. When is this going up? tomorrow. It's going up Sunday. I'm recording. It's Saturday night when I'm recording this. So tomorrow for me, I'm going to try to catch up and finish off this epic collection. This is the 4th epic collection of Thor. I've got to read every issue of Thor from the first run of Thor, which ran from the early 60s into the mid 90s. And I have to read it all by October 5th, 2024. And I'm pretty much on pace, but I'm just a wee little behind where I want to be. So yeah, To Wake the Mangog. This is awesome. This is still Jack Kirby, Stan Lee stuff. And the next issue I'm going to be reading is issue 165 with him. It's him. And if I'm remembering right, this character, him, later on becomes Warlock. He later on becomes Warlock. And then there's that whole really weird Warlock series. I have the Warlock and the God, why am I so tired? I have the whole Warlock omnibus. That was the word I was looking for. How did I forget omnibus? I have the Warlock omnibus. And I think this is the first appearance of Warlock before he was Warlock. It's Thor. It's awesome. Great stuff. So that's what I'm reading right now. And after I finish this book, moving into next month, probably the first thing I'm going to read is this book. This is John Wyndham's The Midwichucko. So it is also the Winter of Wyndham, which is an event created by Books, Songs, and Other Magic. Fantastic channel, Books, Songs, and Other Magic. Gareth over there is a big fan of John Wyndham, and so he's spreading the word about the wonders of Wyndham, and every month of winter we have we could choose a John Wyndham book to read, and so for December, I'm going to be reading this one, The Midwichucko, which is thin, which is good for the 500 book challenge. This is the time of year where I always feel inadequate because, I'm on BookTube, and so I'm watching videos from CriminOlly, who reads super fast, and another bibliophile who reads super fast, and they're both doing the 100 book challenge, the Read What You Own challenge. And I think CriminOlly is already on book 21 or 22 or something, because CriminOlly reads a book every other day. Literally every day or every other day he finishes a book. It's amazing. He just reads so fast. And another bibliophile reads very quickly as well. And I do not read that fast. I don't read very fast. And so I read like a smidgen of what they read. And I end up feeling inadequate. And I'm feeling like, I really need to get through more books because I'm not even at 100. I'm at 80? I'm at 82 on the 500 book challenge. And I really feel like I really got to read a little bit more quickly. So this is thin and small, and I'm going to be reading other smaller books, like vintage science fiction next year. I'm thinking ahead to next year. I'm going to be reading a lot more vintage science fiction. I'm going to be doing fewer events, reading events, so I could just tear through my boxes of vintage science fiction, because a lot of those books are smaller and they tend to read quickly. This one actually is 250 pages. This is Berserker by Fred Saberhagen. But, I'm sure it'll be a quick read. And I'm going to be getting back to Edgar Rice Burroughs, his books. You could tear through his books. So, getting back to Edgar Rice Burroughs. And you know what I have a lot of? I have so much of? Star Trek. I have a lot of Star Trek books. I figure it's time I finally start reading them. So I'll be reading a lot more. This is The Price of the Phoenix. Steve Donahue says this is a work of... Steve Donahue says this is a masterpiece of fiction. He says it's the best ever. So I'm going to read The Price of the Phoenix because it's not that long. And it's a Star Trek book. And I have to finish these Star Trek logs. I'm on log 3 from James Blish. And I have a ton of Star Trek books. And even the ones that aren't super short are quick reads. Grammaticus has actually helped me in this, the great booktube channel Grammaticus, because Grammaticus for January has talked me into reading the great book of Amber. Because this is gigantic, but it's actually 10 books. It's 10 shorter books all in one book. And I will be counting them as 10 individual books. And it starts off with the 9 Princes of Amber. And I've heard great things about this, so thank you, Grammaticus, for talking me into doing this for January. Grammaticus is a great channel. He's one of my favorite channels, Grammaticus. I watch every video that he does, you know, if I have the time. I watch every video that he does eventually, because Grammaticus is great. Grammaticus is like, you know, he likes a lot of the stuff I do, but he reads a lot of different books than I do. And he's kind of like the closest thing BookTube has to Rambo, right? I think he's the closest that BookTube has to Rambo. And, I mean, he wears a shirt, usually, when he does his videos. Only when he does his videos, though. The rest of the time, he just goes shirtless, and, like, he has, like, this glistening muscles, you know. He shaves his chest. I don't know why. But the rest of the time, he wears a, you know, like Rambo, he has like the headband, you know, and he walks around with a big knife and a compound bow. You know, to each his own, you know, but when he gets on BookTube, he usually puts a shirt on. Usually. But like I said, just like Rambo. And not just because he eats things that would make a billy goat puke. Although he does. He doesn't even have to, and he does. Grammaticus, interesting guy. You should check out his channel. I'll link it down below. Anyway, he talked me into reading Amber in January. So it's Ambuary for me in January. So that should help with the 500 book challenge. And do I have anything else to say? Maybe. Oh, I did get one thing in the mail, but it's not for me. Some lucky Englishman is going to be getting this in a package that I'm going to be sending him eventually. You know, I've got all these packages. I got back from Boston last month. It was last month, right? Maybe. Anyway, I got back from Boston, and I have packages that I'm due to send because I went and bought books in Boston at the Brattle, and I came back and I was going to send these packages out to my British friends, and I haven't yet sent my British friends their packages. And so what's happened over time is that I keep putting more books into these packages of my British friends, and I've had to take them out of the boxes they were in and put them in bigger boxes. And now I thought, you know, I got to send this in one of these packages because this is Creature Features, the most useful. It's one of the most useful books you could possibly have. I mean, it's one of the greatest reference works of all time. I got to stick this into one of the packages. It's Gareth's package. I got to send it to. I'm sending this to Gareth, along with all the other books I'm sending it to him when I finally do send them. I will send them out. I will. I just have to have them. I only have Mondays when I can go to the post office, and every Monday I've been super busy, or not in town. You know, so, or there's been a holiday. Every Monday I've had an excuse not to send these packages. What I should do is just send them UPS, because that way I can stop by on the way home from work at the UPS place. I should do that. UPS is, yeah, they go to Britain. UPS goes to Britain. I should do that. Man, why didn't you think of this until now? This guy. Anyway, I'm just babbling incoherently, so I will shut up now. This is what happens. I worked all day today, and I'm like, so, you know, you get a babbling idiot. And so I'll shut up. Okay, guys, I will catch you next time.